faces in the room, but happy to meet a few new people as always. I'm kind of excited about the forum we've got assembled here. It's kind of cool to be at the first of anything, and first CLD Summit for Phoenix is something I was excited to be part of. My name is Ryan Griffin. I work with Nate at Orbital Sciences. A little more about what our big software project is. It's a test automation software for a whole spacecraft. So as spacecraft components come together onto the bus, we do system level integration, we do data logging at a very big scale. It's one of the bigger applications that I know of in the Phoenix area. We provide NI a copy of our software to use in their regression tests for big, ugly applications, and it's kind of why I took the job. It's that application, it's in Phoenix, and Orbital's really been cool to work for. I'm going to talk about GUI Components and Techniques. I'm kind of getting the impression from the conversations we had that this is aimed a little bit low for the assembled group. So we'll kind of skim through it. I've got 3 or 4 backup presentations, GUI presentations that were given at the CLA Summit. So I attended the CLA Summit in the spring of this year, and it was the same thing. So it's delivering professional software. So I brought as a backup, in case we scream through this and it's boring, the presentations from that. I have to thank Jason for giving the perfect intro. I think there's a lot of overlap between what we're going to talk about. I'm going to focus on components and techniques, a little heavier on the components than the techniques. And then I hope to spend like half my time on demos because I brought some fun UIs. Again, if we run low on time, we can go pull stuff off the internet that you guys like, cool applications, whatever. Every UI presentation I found, preparing for this, has a slide that's like, why should we care about user interface? I think it's funny because it's your user's interface. So it's kind of the primary thing, other than getting a job done. You need to get a job done, but not annoy your user. I mean, any software tool you think of in like a professional sense of the word, if it gets out of your way and lets you do, by hook or by crook, what you need to do, it's a good piece of software, right? We don't all need to have a graphics design, background, although it's awesome when you do because even your presentation is good. But we can do things, that don't require high barrier to entry and a copy of Illustrator and Ninja degree. My kind of hit list for what makes a good piece of software is making things that you do all the time easy to do. Fewer keystrokes and clicks, the better. Make things easy to find. The example that I pointed out was laid out in a grid and numbered. So it walked the user through what the user interface does. It teaches without needing a user manual. And we should try to avoid that cool new feature in LabVIEW that we want to shoehorn into our application that then becomes non-intuitive to the user. And I fall prey to this all the time. And one of the demos I brought today is something that I designed 3 or 4 years ago, and I broke that rule. And I'm reviewing my own designs, and you're like, wish I wouldn't have done it. We don't want to write purple code, as Jason said. Just because the paintbrush is there. And also I think, although the classic controls are there, every application in LabVIEW that I've used that's written with the super old classic controls, I feel like I'm going to break it. So I feel like it's a double-edged sword. You want it to look modern and usable, and try and avoid, even though it's on the palette, the older controls. Software that gets out of your way is a good thing. All right, so the basics. You wouldn't be here if you hadn't seen a Boolean in your travels. I'm big on the system controls toolbar in the palette. Nice buttons. I wrote an application in XP specifically because I was excited to move to Windows 7 someday. I'll show that to you guys, but it upgrades like a champ and looks like I wrote it yesterday from years and years ago. System controls carry forward. It's my preferred type. We'll talk a little bit about some guidelines for tabs. Who here uses splitters on their VIs? Okay, so about half. It's something that lets us leapfrog ahead in a couple of areas. I'll spend a couple slides on it. One of the demos I have shows off what you can do, specifically related to rescaling your VIs. It's nice. Subpanels I didn't have a slide on, but we'll talk about it a little. Other input types, pros and cons. Custom controls. Anybody use custom controls? Yeah. That's a good sampling. Okay. More advanced stuff. Custom runtime menus, custom right-click menus is a favorite of mine. X controls, you can bundle logic into your controls, so anywhere you drop it, the logic follows with. Kind of cleans up some of your frequently used things. ActiveX and .NET containers are kind of the hook to the world. You go pick them off a website and use whatever stuff that's not on the palette, but it's got its own logic behind the scenes. A couple ones to mention, an embedded web browser is right on the palette now, and it's just a .NET container. And you send it the web page you want to load, your test results or whatever, and it shows up on your front panel. So you get all of that Internet Explorer or whatever browser functionality in the LabVIEW container. It's nice. There's a lot of great UI presentations about doing stuff with GIFs and PNGs with transparency. How awesome is it? It's how you make cool
PNGs.
PNGs, yeah.
Especially.
Yep. It's all, we can demo a couple of those, it'll be fun. I've never gotten to use a 3D graph, and they look awesome.
Well, they suck some space too.
What's that?
They'll take up some processing time and suck some memory space, yeah.
Yeah, I believe that they'd hit your CPU pretty hard. So that's kind of the stock components with an eye toward extendability through ActiveX and .NET. Stuff that's not on the palettes that we should be using in our standard quiver. A splash screen. LabVIEW has it. LabVIEW is a professional application. It's just natural to stare at something while your application loads. And it's not something we necessarily invest time in for, like small one-off applications. But these are things you can do, and there's examples online, and it's like 15 minutes, and makes the user experience 2, 3, 10 times as good, right? They're not like, why isn't your panel responding? This is a piece of crap. To, I got a nice graphic. Same thing, and I talk a little bit more about it later, but feeding back that kind of information to your user is expected by the user. Why isn't this responding? Well, there's a little piece of text at the bottom that says working, ... And that's all that it takes to make somebody understand what you're doing. And like Jason's panel, just walk through the steps. You're doing your job as a software engineer, and the tool is doing its job. It takes how long it takes. Just explain to the user what's going on. Tooltip and tip strips we've talked about a little. If you don't use them, it's where you hover over a control and get kind of that context information. I expect this field to be formatted like so. It's something you don't want to take up space for, but it's nice to have handy. I'll try and dig up on disk where I've got that nice resizable Windows-like dialog that we're going to make a template out of someday. Windows visibility is a tool in your quiver. I'll step through the VI properties dialog really quickly. I expect everybody here is familiar with it. Error handling, it's a whole presentation, but the way you present errors to your user also determines very much how professional your software feels. An about menu item that tells you what the version of the software is. One place you can go, so if somebody calls you and you're like, well, what version are you using? Everybody knows to go there. So why not get it to them for 10 minutes of work? And then some stuff for deployed applications. Start menu, desktop links. I'll show you the notification icon we added for AsserRT is our product line. It's really cool. Name's proud of it. Okay. We talked a little bit about meeting user expectations, but there are some things that I haven't been good at, and now looking back, I wish I would have. And every time I build a panel where somebody's going to put in some data, you put smart default values in for all those things. It's even better than the tip stream. Oh, so you want month, day, four times a year? I know what to put in there. Even if you put the letters in there, you're guiding people through how to use your panel. Tabbing order, I mean, anyone who shops online, I just use the tab key. And then when it doesn't work in LabVIEW, people stop and think, why did it jump from here to there? And it makes you realize that you're dealing with software that one of us developed rather than a professional. Did you infer that?
Did you get there?
Didn't you infer that? It's trying to be modest. I'm just a Joe trying to do a good job. Remembering last entered values, it's kind of become an expectation. I mean, Google knows what I've searched before. Why doesn't your application? That's really nice, and your system's nice. OK and cancel buttons in the lower right-hand corner of your display. How many times do we make displays that don't have them in the right spot? And stay there as you scale the window.
The same order?
Same order, yeah. OK on the left, cancel on the right. And you default to the OK button rather than the cancel button. Has anybody ever seen that the order you drop system buttons on a front panel matters?
What, you mean in terms of the tab order?
No, in terms of, so the window defaults, the highlight, what do you call that?
Focus?
The key focus defaults to the last system button you dropped on the front panel. So if you drop an OK button and a cancel button and don't think about it past that, your panel's going to come up. If somebody hits the space bar on accident, it cancels out of your panel.
Why not just create an X control if it's going to be something you do over and over like that?
You could do that, yeah. That's what we put in our template display. I don't make enough new code. Resizability is something that LabVIEW gets beat up pretty badly for. I like it because you can take your main data space, the thing you want to show the user, and maximize it to the screen. It's why I'm using your tool. I want to be able to see as much of it as I can. Consistent formatting, layout of pieces across panels is very important. I already talked about the usability thing, but really hand your application to a user and have them click through, the day-to-day operations. They're only going to use 20% of your features. Standard user, right? What you want to do is you want to invest a bunch of your time in polishing the crap out of those functions of your panel, and then, in your priority of things, put the rest of them aside. It's a dialogue I don't use very often. I'm not going to go spend 10 hours to do it when my prime dialogue doesn't have a working X in the upper right-hand corner, which the user expects to be able to click. Yeah?
You want to find out how usable your UI is. Take a standard user, sit him down in front of your software, give him a list of goals, with no instructions on how to do it, and stand behind him and don't say a word and take notes.
Yep.
You will find out that some of your assumptions are totally wrong. As a matter of fact, most of your assumptions are totally wrong.
I like that.
I've actually put our secretary in front of the computer, not given her instructions, and said, figure this out. And if she can do it, then I know I'm in good shape.
I think I had it on this one, but it's on the next one. Watch new users, drive your programs. Questions or frustration may mean that your user interface is lacking. I hand my panels to coworkers that haven't worked on it. I hand it to my wife. I hand it to random strangers. Here, go use this. And I think the feedback is very true. You find holes in your assumptions. Program's not bad, it just, not everybody's thought process goes the same direction. So I said, you know, we don't all have to be graphics designers or Photoshop ninjas to make progress in the way we make LabVIEW user interfaces. But we can't lean on those people. I mean, every time I sit through a user interface presentation, I learn something new. Or you polish how you polish effective ways to show people information. So I hadn't thought about numbering columns of controls before until now. And it's just like falling off a log. Oh, I do 1, then 2, then 3. We talked about resizability a little bit, but I think there's a power in LabVIEW that we don't use quite as much as we could, which is to move and resize show hide controls on the fly. You know, we've got property node hooks for all of these things. We tend to think of the user interface as static. You design it once, it lands there. It's kind of where it lives for life. But a lot of the power we don't use is to resize things. Or you've got more than one thing that can take that main data space on a display. Well, you hide 2 of the 3, and you show the one that you want in a given context. Scaling with pane is awesome. Just don't do it with tab controls. Anybody have a bad experience with resizing tab controls? I don't know. Nancy, is there an understanding of why it does that? All the controls shift around relative to one another and relative to
Yeah,
their
I don't have a
size.
good answer on that one.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
Don't do it.
I just don't do it, yeah.
Right. You
Yeah,
don't-
because I tend to use, if I'm gonna be doing the rescaling, I mean, the stuff that's in the tab control, I always think about is, well, that's probably my configuration stuff, that's the stuff that doesn't change. The stuff that my user really wants to rescale are my graphs and things like that. So I try to keep those really, what's the word I'm looking for, atomic. So when someone launches something that's going to be scalable, it is a graph that displays a certain type of data.
Mhm.
Then they can rescale that. I don't try to put too much stuff on it, but
Gotcha.
that's just in my experience.
And that's a good point of certain types of information scale well and some don't. And graphs and trees and tables and like text inputs scale really well. You drop them in a pane, say scale with a pane. That's the kind of stuff I put in your main data space. And then other things like a configuration dialog. Maybe you make that a standalone dialog rather than as part of your main user interface. So your main window scales like a champ, and then you've got this thing that moves around. Most settings dialogs are kind of like that. They're fixed size. Nobody tries to resize them, you know. And like I say, if you want to study professional UIs for inspiration, the LabVIEW settings dialog is a thing of beauty. And I think it uses subpanes, so you can add things later, and we'll go through some examples of that. Tell your user what your program is doing. It's doing its job. Along with that, you can make the user feel good. Hey, it's doing its job. It's right on schedule. Rather than, why is this taking forever? Even dumb status bars. I love that Microsoft went from, you know, the linear status bar 0 to 100 to the one that when it gets to the end, it starts over. I was like, genius! Why didn't I think of that? I said, just start taking credit again. If you're stuck at 99%, just keep going. And navigation, you know, if you are walking through configure, set up your test recipe, run the tests, analyze the data, a lot of times it's nice to know where you're at in that flow. So a numbering scheme, saying you're at step 3 of 5, is really simple to put in, especially if it's on like a tab control. But again, tells the user where they're at, you know, in the process. All right, so the fun part. So I just trolled, you know, the LabVIEW user interface group and a bunch of code I've written, and tried to pull up some fun things. I want this to be, you know, like a brainstorming session, or you can critique these VIs and say what you like, what you don't like, what have you. So let's just go over. Did anyone know we can import CAD models into to LabVIEW?
Yes. Yep.
This is awesome. So you got a 3D spinnable thing, and they've just, you know, put a sensor here and there and whatever, and they're just cycling sine waves through a bunch of points that are kind of on the outside skin of this thing. So you turn this off, and you get just yours. Add some zones, and if you add no zones, so
You can also zoom into the side of that car. You can go inside of it.
what? How do you zoom?
Hold shift, I think.
Shift.
Mouse wheel.
Scroll bar.
Mouse wheel.
Right click.
Mouse
Mouse
wheel.
wheel.
Control mouse wheel. Shift mouse
There's-
wheel. Okay. There's
Drag it.
minus.
Plus sign.
There you go.
There you go.
All right, so
Keep
Nate
going.
says we can go inside the car.
Yeah, go inside.
Let's go inside the car. Holy cow, you can go. Okay, so
Not quite there yet.
this is awesome. Oh, keep going. Yeah, I don't want to go that far. I liked just being able to see the rearview mirror. Okay, so who knew you could do this in LabVIEW? And it's really cool. So there's this is just a list of things, and you know, I've got a list of links at the end. You go look this up if you want, but there's, you know, step-by-step instructions on how to import a CAD model into your VI, into this control type, and map sensor data to different points on the model, and then do this kind of gradient thing. Anyway, that was really cool.
Isn't
What?
that diadem?
It's just sensor mapping. Stop it.
I was
And it's got this
I was
whole
making
thing.
a comment about the diadem product
What's that?
What
that
about?
does all that.
Is there another? So there's
Have
multiple
you
ways to
seen
do
diadem
this.
from?
Oh,
Okay, yeah, there's some of that.
that's cool. I haven't seen them use 3D models. Anyway, it's a Express VI. Lets you go in and configure all those settings.
So what's the feedback on that GUI? Do we all like it?
Oh yeah. What do you guys think?
Is it user?
Yeah.
We didn't know Zoom.
No.
You should have put that in there, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Should be a zoom button. Good point.
Yeah.
Or it helps.
Mm-hmm.
How to zoom would have been helpful.
What happens
I've
when you
asked.
resize the window?
Yep. No.
Cool. It resizes.
Oh,
It allows me
look
to
at that.
resize. I feel powerful.
Now you can.
I'm in control.
Yeah,
I
but
don't like Windows that I go to resize it and this tells me you can't.
Yeah, but it should resize the image too.
Right, right. So if we had an example, maybe we'd put some splitters in here and fit this control to the remaining pane. I'm not gonna try it live. We can come back. I
I
got a
also
lot of
noticed
fun.
that you can
This is
make
just
it
one
so
of like
small
15,
and all it
so.
should be able to do that.
I've tried showing that sensor mapping to our thermal guys, and their question to me was like, what does that gradient really mean? You know, like they didn't understand, they couldn't figure out how they would apply it to visualizing their temperature data on the.
Gotcha. What the algorithm is behind mapping discrete points
Yeah.
to that gradient. I don't know. That's the Express VI settings probably let you do different things. I would expect.
Showing the scale would be good. What it means.
Right. Very true.
But how do you determine? the
So this is an auto fade demo I found where you click and little dialog boxes show up and then fade in different amounts of time. If you put your mouse in, it catches the key focus. It's kind of a cool effect. I've seen it in a couple places. I'm not sure whether I've got the demo at hand, but fading in your splash screen is a double win. Not only do you have a splash screen, and everybody feels good about how long it takes to load your software, but it fades in and fades back out. You get a control over the transparency of the windows to an extent. And if you dig into the Windows hooks, you've got pretty fine control. You can set like the alpha channel to the background color here. I don't know if I've got that one. Let's go. Okay, so that's it's just got a dynamic color, and then this guy controls its own transparency. It's just a VI property. So starts at 100 or starts at 0 and just adds up in a loop. And here's the timeline for it. Any questions on that one? Pretty straightforward. has Windows 7. Awesome. XP's gonna die soon, I hear. Somebody went to the trouble of showing us how to create a Windows 7 ribbon-like interface where you get different content depending on which tab you've selected. Nice coloring of hover, nice coloring of click and selected. And then just kind of some of the stylistic things. You see this arc in the background. I wanted to break this and show you guys how they did it. There is a tab control here. Tab control and a splitter. So for those of you that haven't seen splitters, they used this splitter right here that's movable for me in edit mode. Do you have a question? That's movable for me in edit mode. They set the color of one pane to one color, the color of the other pane to another color. Maybe they've even got a gradient in here. What they've got is a couple button controls. So this is just a button that they applied some fancy styling to. This is a custom control that is built on the system control running on Windows 7, I would think. It may just be a picture. And then depending on which button you click, tab 1 or tab 2, just shows you different content. I wonder if you can even click the tabs. I can't. So it's fun. That's kind of cool.
I've never seen sideways tabs. Sideways.
How do we do that? Anybody know where that is?
I think it's in advanced.
Okay. Tab layout.
There it is.
But there you go.
Ah, cool.
Cool. What's something? I didn't know. Okay, so there is something out there if you've just got to have a ribbon on your UI. And look at all the different pieces they have. I'll go over a little bit of how to go create stuff like this on the cheap without professional tools. It's called PowerPoint. PowerPoint. We'll let you create, like the default shapes, the rounded edge rectangle, apply a gradient to it, and then save it with transparency to a file. That's a fun demo to actually run. Let's see, Pocket UI. Okay, so this was an example I found where they used a tab control as just an easily movable container to slide in and slide out a little menu. So it's called a touch panel application because it's all nice big buttons. I like this. Depending on what button you push, you get different content in the main screen. Key metrics, options, big stop button. They used a transparent PNG here and just made a custom control to do this. You can go do this right now. I'll show you guys how. Settings. Let's stop it, break it down. So they've got this tab control down at the bottom. That's just, it doesn't have its tabs showing. So they just use it as a container so they can slide in and out this rack of things. And they've got another tab control that shows you the content. So the different buttons we click on, you click.
So it sounds like we need a special container, some special container type objects on the front panel, so we don't have to.
Got one. Awesome. Doesn't scale well, but we could use a generic one.
But it also, but then from a academic purist standpoint, that leaves me a terminal and a block diagram.
Right.
I think in iWeek they showed this example. I think it's a for loop when they're setting the height of that. It's like iteratively just stepping up the height of that.
So if I suspected, they just give it the tab control reference, and then this is a generic sub-VI, so kind of cool if you want it.
Yeah.
It goes and operates on a G object and moves it around your pane.
Yep. Okay.
And then somebody's nice. Because if you've ever made slide in, slide out logic yourself, linear it's unnatural. Anyway, you get a funny reaction from people when you try it. Looks motorized. This is nice. So here's some cool logic for any of your sliding logic bundled into a nice thing that operates on a G object. It's there.
If you want to completely geek out with that, you can use a sine wave to control the motion, so it accelerates and then slows down and stops.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Oh, that's cool.
Thank you.
I've done that.
That sounds fun.
X. Oh, this is the.
Yeah, that is.
Well, I take it back. It seemed perfectly natural. Sine wave would be awesome. But same thing. You just put the position of the control in here and use its moving controls around. You know, controls on front panels are not static things. You can screw with them and resize them to some extent.
Couldn't you have used a slitter for that too? Can't you move the slitter up and down?
I think
I guess my question is, isn't the pane already what Nancy was referring to? A pane is a container for other things.
I guess you could, if you're just moving in one direction.
Oh, that's an interesting
You could
thought.
link, you could group your controls and just shrink the size of the upper pane.
Or the lower pane, just move the lower pane up.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Right? You just,
You wouldn't, I don't think you'd want to do that.
Let's throw the exit
Anyway.
button first, and as it comes up, maybe.
I love LabVIEW.
You can move the splitter kind of that.
As part of my tips and tricks slide, did everybody know that you can click Control M and see what your panel's going to look like without running the code? I didn't learn that till yesterday.
You're kidding.
No, it's awesome.
I'm pretty sure it's in Core 1, like at the very beginning of your LabVIEW
Self-taught.
experience.
Yeah. So I include a lot of
Like, you're
stuff.
gonna remember that anyhow.
I include a lot of stuff in my presentations. That's you know, stuff you probably already know, and if you know, good for you. It's stuff I didn't know until yesterday. Tips and tricks, and let's just screen through them all in here. Did you know? Oh, here's my colorblind test. Did you know? You guys all change your default window title to get rid of the .vi?
Yeah, sometimes.
Good. It's better that you do. Users don't care you're developing in LabVIEW, or they shouldn't even know. Professional software, I don't know whether something's written in C or Java, and probably better that way, right? It sticks out like a sore thumb. Everybody's like, what's VI mean? Is that important to me? No, just uncheck it and give it a good name. I was watching a video the other day, and they used the scroll bar to get to pane properties rather than the right click on the splitter, give you the pane properties. Pretty slick way to get to that particular dialog. Everybody know what system colors are? Raise your hands. Okay, it's a little more advanced, but it's like transparency per the system you're on. I'll show you an example real quick. That's a good one. If you've got a system container creation thing. This is my new favorite way to group things. Independent of what style you use, saying that this is a group of controls. This guy. If you drop this system label, it's got the system color built in. This is the fastest way I've found to get to it. It's down in the system control palette. What it does for you, if you're over a gradient or over something, it masks like other system controls. Anyway, this looks a little more professional than if you just drop any old label. Sorry. It looks transparent and all, and that's cool. But you go drop it on here, and the decoration shows right through. This doesn't look as nice. Anyway, if you use containers, it works on tab controls too. Anything where you've got a gradient. So check this out. Oh, that's the bad one. And that doesn't work. Anyway, I almost exclusively use it for this thing. Let's keep stepping through demos. So there's a special hex code for the color in this box. So you can copy it out with the color sniffer, and it shows up as this kind of black thing. It's interesting, but you can apply it to all kinds of things. Anyway, there's a short list of system controls that don't show up on your color picker palette. If you're interested in what those mean on different operating systems, just go look up system colors on forums.
And you can change those system colors on your machine. Windows can change them.
Right, so it sticks with the theme of whatever computer you deliver
And
to.
you can actually go in and, I mean, I've seen people that just set their background up really weird. The problem can be is, if they choose some really weird colors,
Right.
your UI can now all of a sudden look horrible.
But the
And
system
it's not your fault, it
transparency
looks
one-
just like their stuff.
Right, but the system transparency one is pretty safe.
Yeah.
I gotta speed up a little bit. And this ran pretty slow on my machine last time I ran it. This is a cool, who's seen this demo? I'm a big fan, because it not only rescales, but it's got nice mouse over indication. So this is supposed to be a Windows U8 or a Windows 8 kind of thing where everything's in boxes. It's a very modern control approach rather than a skeuomorphic thing where you've got something that looks like an honest to goodness doorknob or a switch that you would switch. This is very abstract. So it's a good example of what you can do. He's got some slides back and forth, things sliding in and out. You can undock things. You can delete pieces. So there's a piece of code if you're interested in making your application look like this. Set the countdown time. Now it's only going to sample every 10 seconds, whatever. Thought it was pretty slick.
Where can I find that sample?
I can send you a link.
Okay.
Or you can just Google Windows 8 GUI.
Okay.
Most of these, if you kind of get the idea, the keywords that you'd think will bring them up.
Do you have a references slide?
What's that?
Do you have a reference
I've got
slide?
some. I wasn't super high fidelity because nobody pays me. I mean, I try to do a good job capturing the important ones. And I've got on my references slide a list of videos that I sample from pretty heavily. Here it is. I don't have one for I've got one for the ribbon, but I don't have one for the Windows 8 GUI that I see.
I'm looking for one, there should be one on the Salt Lake user group. They have 2 user groups, but there was a gentleman there, Marty Bowles at ATK. He did something similar where you you almost swipe across in the Windows, I haven't been on Windows, but he does some of the across stuff and it looks, takes it even a step further and.
Oh, cool.
And he's banged his head against the wall, because he did it with the picture control toolkit, but I'm looking to see if I can find that presentation online and I'll let you know.
Okay, yeah, and I can grow this list of links or whatever.
We're going to try to get all these presentations uploaded to the user group page.
All right, and the leftover ones are my really heavy ones that are going to take us some time to walk through. They're equally cool. AsperT is the product line I work on. It's got hundreds of VIs. We could go through and step through each of them, what you like, what you don't. This health monitor demo is something built on top of the Actor framework that lets you swap out the user interface you have, whether you're an engineer and you care about sensor IDs, whether you're the end user and you just want to see a picture of your house with sensor data on it, or whether you're the install technician and you want to see signal strength by room, or a quick demo of how the system works end to end. So like a sales presentation. So there are 3 user interfaces that are each objects in object-oriented programming, and then they just inherit from a parent user interface class. Phil, I think you're going to talk a little bit about this, but it's dynamic dispatch for UIs. And so my private data is like the list of common indicators on my UI. So I can just throw away my user interface. I don't like it anymore. Go code a new one hand the object the list of control references, and I've decoupled my user interface from my code, and you can use it in 4 different ways. So kind of a cool idea. Monitor control editor. This is a thing with like 6 picture controls. It's kind of like what you said, Nancy, that lets you use a stack of picture controls to move stuff around. And then, so there's an editor and user. And then XDAS is the one that I dug up from the grave from a couple of years ago that's got, it's got,
maybe in more details, how you separate this user control class from function like this.
I was looking for interest on any of these. That's the correct response.
So probably actually pattern is this kind of user events.
So I've just got here a factory pattern where I pick off of a selector on the front. Are you an engineer? Are you an end user? Do you want to play back some data you captured earlier? Are you a salesperson and you want to demo this thing? And depending on what you pick, I hand a LabVIEW object into the actor framework and tell it to use that user interface. And they're all children of a shared parent, and they've all got the same buttons. These are control references, right? So these are the shared features of my shared parent class. And then anything else, stuff the engineer cares about, I get it from somewhere other than this. It's inheritance at its finest. And then I hand it to the actor framework, which is a whole 2-hour presentation in itself, but it lets modules talk amongst each other using messages. So if I want to communicate from my code to the user interface, there's a standard communication protocol to do that, and it's nice because I can just strip off the user interface, drop in a new one, it'll receive messages just like its brother, cousin, I guess they're siblings.
So it's, actor framework messages.
Yes. Yep.
Actually, another way is to use user events. You can compare.
Yeah, and there's a lot of inter-process communication. I think we talked about that some at the CLA Summit. But CLA Summit 2 years ago was, 3 years ago? Whenever it was entirely on different ways you can do that. So it's an active thing. So just because I like my demo, and I think I have to stop LabVIEW. It's not the best application. But it's a thing I created in Paint because I don't have Illustrator of kind of the floor plan of my house. Each of the little check boxes is a little motion sensor. And depending on where you are in the house, this is for monitoring elderly clients that want to stay in their home, they don't want to go to hospice. And so we put motion sensors in their home, and if they stay still for too long, we alert somebody that something untoward has happened. You don't have to have a pendant on you. All you have to do is hold still and help will be called. So kind of cool. But you can hold still in the bedroom. The motion sensor picks up activity once in a while. You can hold still for 100 seconds or the length of a nap, depending on the time of day, and no help will be called, right? Into the hallway. If you slip and fall in the hallway, fallen and I can't get up, and my pendant's back in the bedroom. There's a countdown timer on the whole system. It ticks down. So this is my sales presentation, right? So this thing ticks down, and then I think I turned it off, but I'd get a text message. Right now, there's a warning message. It goes out to a list of people that care if you've held still for longer than 15 seconds in the hallway. Configurable. Put the system on standby when you leave. You got time to get your keys, get out of the house, whatever. From an engineering point of view, I care about the zones when they went off. I can simulate activity so I don't actually have to have sensors in front of me to test my panel. I can simulate various things. So motion in zone 2, I have lost connection with my base station. We test my warning code, test my emergency code. My Gmail inbox is blowing up right now. just so you're all aware. And it's great because this is the same information as it's the same thing as I showed to give to the salesperson. So cool, right? Warning emergency. Okay, I moved. I'm okay. It's all good. And that's because on the simulation tab, I simulated that there's a warning. Works. And again, all these components are on actor framework. Like this simulator is an actor that's just sending messages that send the same messages as my motion sensor. Oh, hey, something happened. Anybody that cares that there was motion in zone 2, go do something with it. And so a list of people subscribe to that message from the event producer, and it's all asynchronous and really pretty easy. I wrote this application in it took me a week to learn Actor Framework, but I wrote it in like 2 weeks. And it's pretty deep. It's got all it's production level and it's in the field, so that's fun.
Can I comment on Sergey's question about the notifier or user events? Actor Framework chose to use queues as their transport mechanism. I think in part because it's point to point. It's one, you connect. You have a queue to everybody that cares, basically. Versus notifier is a broadcast. User event is a broadcast. Anybody that happens to register that event can get that. So it's kind of a decision you have to make early on. Do you want to make it easy for that or not?
So we can queues is one-to-one, right? And but user events is proper. You mean that?
And there have been some advancements in events in LabVIEW 2013. You can see them and log them, and it's pretty cool. One more demo I want to show before I step into my presentation, and I'm going to run out of time in about 10 minutes. But this thing is really cool. It's got 6 picture controls, all stacked up on top of one another, and they're all sized to the pane, and they're all transparent except for the stuff you put on them. The alpha channel set to white, and we've created our own user interface. You see about the update rate that we're polling for objects in LabVIEW. So you can do stuff like this, and you can go dynamically add like booleans if you wanted to. So these are just transparent PNGs with some logic behind them and a data structure that goes and gathers information from a bunch of computers. But the user interface is a stack of picture controls. Stop it. Stop it. It's kind of finicky. I'm trying to just snag the red thing. And I can't. But I can snag it on here. Anyway, this is a bunch of little objects, but not in the object orientation sense of objects. It's a pile of data, and each one of these things has some parameters with it. So you can click it and see where the data is coming from. If you've got data flowing, tester object sounds like a good one. So it's got the high level status. It's got a discrete state. It's got a couple booleans on it. Let's go. Oh, and this is all just the editor. So I go configuration, save, water control. Close this out. I go into the player tool. So that was the editor tool. Pick my display file. Did I pick one? There it is. Comes up. That tester object I added, it's got a whole bunch of stuff behind the scenes. Test functions, you can set it to disabled, you can set it to normal. Anyway, kind of cool. But using picture controls, you can go use transparent PNGs and make your own little world. So, kind of cool.
So is this something that you wrote or an example program you downloaded?
This is something we wrote. This is our little proprietary. You guys can't even see the code. It's not transparent.
It's kind
We
of.
could, if there's interest in that, strip it down to a distributable.
I'm not going to comment on that.
So you just have control, picture controls you're keeping, you're just moving around by keeping track. Each of those controls is just keeping track. Keeping track of.
They've all got position information,
Right.
depending on where the mouse is. You get a hook over different things, and
Yeah.
then mouse movement just updates piece of the picture control,
Yeah.
and then there's a big engine that flattens all those pieces together
Ah.
and does the syntax highlighting,
Okay.
and then there's some built-in hooks. Hey, cool, thanks. See, that is an awesome error dialog. I've never even seen it before. This is professional software. I didn't write it. But yeah, and then it flattens all those pieces of information, and each of those pieces of information is smart. It's got a daemon running in the background
Yeah.
that's collecting information over TCP/IP from another machine, say,
Yeah.
and then does some smart stuff to summarize the state of the machine,
Right.
and just gives the picture control
So all the
a little
controls
slice
are
of
like
picture.
separate little daemons running.
Yeah, it's a bunch of them.
Okay.
So it's pretty impressive,
Pretty cool.
and the fact that it talks over the network and samples,
Yeah.
you know, oh, I found a new file in this folder on that machine
Right.
that you cared about. And
Yeah.
that links at you. Okay. How was that for some fun demos? It's a good time. It's a good time. Okay, so I've got not enough time, but that's okay. Components. I used to make that panel that had 1,000 buttons on it. And you run out of space, or you go to a tab control and you run out of tabs. Use menus. Who uses menus? Who uses runtime menus? Anybody customize them runtime? You change the stuff in them. Oh, good. Like the same list. It's cool. I love the recent files and recent settings thing in the file menu. You just go grab a list of files out of your config file or whatever, and tell your user these are the last 10 things you accessed. It's a huge functionality for really cheap in LabVIEW. I can show you guys that if you're interested. Show hide the default LabVIEW menu bar. Is everybody? I'm going to take an anti-show of hands. Who here wants to hear about? Who here wants to hear about the window appearance settings? Anybody? Okay, pretty bread and butter. In it, you'll find the show.
Question?
Yes.
Just going back a little bit with the, I forgot now.
It's okay.
What were you just talking about?
Runtime menus.
Oh, yeah. So with the runtime menus, are you using just that then? Like, are there any other ways to, like, I like to be able to access, do one thing multiple ways at times, and sometimes the runtime menu seems too far of a jog.
Right.
Are you using just that? And what I found, if I am providing multiple ways, like a button and a runtime menu option, that then I have to manage that behind the scenes. And so, what are your thoughts there?
My thoughts are fewer clicks, closer proximity to where your mouse is right now to get done what you want to get done is always better. If I can right-click the thing I'm looking at and get a set of context options, do it. If you've already got a button to do it, take that overhead, eat that cost. It allows users that know to right-click things to right-click things. It allows people to look for buttons to look for buttons. You should definitely have a button for your most important 3 features, right? Mm-hmm. And it's our job to manage those and make them seamless, no matter which way you go about it. Old school right-clickers. There's 2 kind of schools of thought that I've found.
What I've done in the past, Mary, is I had a configuration file that defines all the menu items, and then along with those menu items, it's an associated alias. Let's just say that alias is what I use to actually execute whatever it is the option is. And so, and then the alias represented, let's say, a list of states or actions that you have to, like an action list that you have to take, it's like a script or whatever you want to call it. But that way, you can have the menu kind of decoupled from the action with an alias, just a name, and then what you do is for the button, you just call the same. You would just call that same alias. So then you kind of have three different things going on. You got an event for a button, a menu item which corresponds to an alias, and then you have the actual list of actions that kind of like your script or whatever that says for this alias, this is all the actions you need to take. So then if you decouple all those, then you only have to manage the actions you take for that one particular alias, and just make sure that you get the aliases right. And that's what I've done. And then actually I put all those things in a configuration file, so it's all can be just edited on the fly, which is kind of dangerous because you mess up that configuration file and your whole application does not work. But at the same time, it's nice because you could change the order of the actions for that menu click or the button click just from the configuration file, and kind of quickly go through it and get it done that way.
Okay, thanks. Good idea.
I did like what you said about the right click, because if somebody doesn't know about right click, then how do I do this? I don't know how to do this now.
Right.
But if you have buttons that say, A, B, C, do this thing, and then it's an extra way to do the same thing your buttons do,
Right.
that's powerful then.
And I feel like right-click in particular, I think I may even say it here. With great power comes great responsibility. Oh, that's for splitters. Okay. No, the great power is it gets the action right where you are right now, and that's really satisfying. But the responsibility is you have to carry two ways of doing it to satisfy users that don't think to right click, and I really feel like it's about half and half people. So, let's see. I'm just going to kind of screen through these. Everybody knows how to catch menu selections with an event structure using item tag or item path. You can tweak runtime menus at runtime. I really think this is a killer app to help people. Now, where did I put that file? The recent files thing is huge and easy to do. Divider separators, I showed you guys that little container with the transparent label. Even if you've got 100 controls on your user interface and you've got a little box around each 10 of them with the label, that's fine. That is a readable user interface. I go to the group that I want, and then I care about which control it is. You can get away with all kinds of things if you logically separate things. I've got some logical grouping slides in here because I think it's...
Okay, that's a tab control, please.
You can do it with a tab control as well. But even within a tab control, I like having 4 or 5 of those little containers just to visually focus you in. It's all about grouping things so people know where to look. Everybody know how to make splitters thin and the same color as your background? Use a classic style splitter. They only have one color. So you make them match your background, and independent of how thick they are, if you lock them, it separates your UI, but you can't tell that there's a splitter there. That's sneaky. Setting the minimum pane size, and for that matter, the minimum VI size is like a safety mechanism. If you don't set it, somebody can scrunch your VI to the minimum LabVIEW size, and that's unprofessional, can be. You can move splitters in real time, and I do that when I've got, you've segmented your display into a bunch of pieces, and all of a sudden you want to hide that whole left menu bar thing. You just unlock the control that's set to scale with that pane. You unlock it, you hide it, and then you move the splitter to the far left edge, and it's like that piece went away. It's now 2 pixels wide, but most people aren't that finicky. Anyway, very powerful. One note, when you do that, you have to unlock controls that are scaled to fit a pane to be able to set a pane to 1 pixel wide. So that didn't Whenever you use splitters, had some documentation. So, because whenever you use splitters and hidden controls, like I just described, take a picture of it with the splitters all highlighted in different colors and say, here are the different pieces in the different panels of my BI. Guy that's following behind me, because otherwise it's really confusing when the main tab control disappears. Where did it go? Oh, it's in the third pane over. I just do it. Good luck with proportionally sticking splitters. They're awesome if you get them to work. They don't always work. So, tab controls, use good tab names. Try not to have more than one row of tabs. I like scroll bars, tabs, and kind of in the vein of separating your user interface from the data behind the scenes. It's kind of
Something that happened.
no, it's fine. If you've got controls within a tab control set to scale with the tab control, that's when you get into trouble. Is the controls will all migrate off the page. They just march.
So the this control holds the tab, right?
Yeah, and tab controls fit to a pane work just fine. If you drag the pane smaller than the like default width of your tab control, you just start hiding stuff. And sometimes that's legit.
If you resize pane, everything will resize pane.
No.
One will tab.
So let's look at a demo real quick. This is the one that I wrote back in 2010 at Honeywell. It didn't upgrade super well from 8.2 to 2012, so bear with me. I get a whole bunch of these little warnings about unknown XML type. This is a tab control fit to a pane. So you see my tab control. You see when I move this, it's a tiny display, but the tab control is moving, right? So it's fine. I've set the minimum.
We're almost 5 minutes over.
Okay. Dangerous, so just be wary of doing stuff when the tab control changes values. You know, there's times when that's the only way to catch user progression through your program, but from a strict software design, UI coupling point of view, it's a bad idea. Try to avoid where you can.
The question